Hi folks, it's Catherine. Today we're going to look at the first of two videos on undertaking the literature review. This first video will look at the principles of doing a literature review, and the second one will look a little bit more closely at the mechanics of doing a literature review. Now, the framework I'm going to introduce you to today is one I developed for myself when I was doing my PhD, which entailed multiple literature reviews. And as you can see from this first screen, it entails 3 stages. The first stage is compiling the literature. At this stage, you're simply going out and searching for the literature and making a list of it. Then in the second stage, we're going to look at making sense of the literature. This is where we're going to read it, summarize it, take notes, and write our literature review. And then, after that, there's maintaining awareness of the literature review. Now, this isn't quite so important for you at this stage, but if you go on to further study, you'll find that between first doing your literature review and completing your thesis, quite a period of time may pass. And you may find that you have to update your literature review because of that. So it's important to maintain awareness of what's happening in the literature during that period so that it's quick and easy to update at the end. So let's look at compiling the literature. Now, there are 4 phases to compiling the literature. The first is define. Here you start out with your research interests. You may not yet have a research question, but as you go on, you may develop your research question and define your keywords that you need to look for, your topics, or even refine your research question. That's why it's an iterative process, this process of defining and refining as you read. You'll identify the different literature types that you need to look at and where they may be found, that is, the sources such as databases. And if you're undertaking a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary research, you'll want to identify the discipline as well. You'll undertake your search and you'll want to develop search strategies. And for that, on the library research guide on the school's website, you'll find that there is a page devoted to search strategies. And it's a good idea to maintain a search log. This is simply a record of the keyword searches that you have done and where you've done them and on what date, particularly as you go on with further study. You may find that your searches might take you 2 or 3 days to do them. It's a good idea to keep a record then of what you've done so you don't lose track and have to repeat any of it. And then you'll compile your literature. So as you find books and journal articles, you'll keep a record of what you have found. Now, at this stage, you're not reading anything other than abstract and title to determine whether or not this article or book is relevant to your research. And by recording it, if you record the citation and download your PDFs, it'll make it quicker when it comes to the next stage in terms of reading the literature that you have found. Now, there are different types of literature. Most advice that you'll find on the web concerning literature reviews will touch upon journal articles mainly, as sometimes books. They tend to ignore grey literature and artifacts. Now, journal articles are what you'll find in journals such as ArtLink, iLine, or Broadsheet. Books obviously will also include topic guides and exhibition catalogues, as well as the books that you'll find in the library. Grey literature, this will include things such as exhibition reviews that are published in the newspaper or interviews with artists. It may include artist statements from exhibitions at galleries. And then, of course, as artists, you'll be interested in the artworks and the exhibitions themselves, because you want to see how your work relates to what else is out there. So that will form part of your literature review as well. Now we come to making sense of the literature. This is probably the biggest part of the literature review. And it goes in 4 phases, which are, again, iterative. You will read. You'll make notes as you read. And I've called it coding, not note-taking, because it's slightly different to note-taking because it's taking notes with a purpose and organizing them at the same time. You will analyze as you write your notes, and then you will write up from your notes your literature review. And you'll find that if your note-taking has been effective, much of what you've written as your notes will go into your literature review. They form the basis of your literature review. Now, a bit more on coding, because this is very important. It is a way of organizing your notes and your thoughts. You're reading with a purpose. You're bearing in mind your research question and the topics that are involved. So you can set up categories or codes that revolve around those research topics. It could include methodologies, as in research methodologies, or it could involve the methods of making art. You may want to compare your art practice with other artists. And other artists then also become a part of your codes. It'll include your summary of the books, journal articles, and exhibitions, and it'll include your own impressions of all of that. So you'll want to set up your note-taking according to these codes. Now, you can do it in an analog manner or a digital manner. So, analog would, of course, include a commonplace book, such as the journal that you keep, or index cards. Index cards are good because you can sort of lay them out on the table and rearrange them when you're at the analysis phase. You can include a Word template or an Excel spreadsheet. I personally use an Excel spreadsheet because I like the sorting functions on it. And the filter functions because then I can sort of filter out when I'm focusing in on particular topics. And if you're using a Word or Excel spreadsheet, then what you're using is what's known as the matrix method. Now here's an example of a commonplace book. Here's an example of index cards that have been used for a pretty big literature review. And this is the matrix method. So here you can see that it has the list of citations on one side, different articles and books, and then it has a series of codes. In this case, the theoretical framework, the hypothesis, the methodology, analysis and results, conclusions, and implications. Now, of course, you'll be using something slightly different. You might be using theoretical framework. You'll use topics from your research question, methodology quite possibly. Where it has analysis and results and conclusions, I would just put summary. I would summarize the article or the book. And then I would have notes, my own impressions, my own thoughts on all of this. And those 2 columns, or actually even all of them, will form the basis of your literature review and help you to write it. Once it's done, then you'll have maintaining awareness of the literature. And you can do this through a number of methods. You can sign up to journals for what's known as table of contents alerts. You can use RSS, real simple syndication feeds. You can follow them on social media. That's a good way of getting alerts to things. And then it's easier to update your literature review. Now, one thing to note when you're doing this, if you go back to your original record of the list of articles and journals that you've compiled, as articles and books emerge through this maintaining awareness phase, you can add them to that list, and that way you don't lose track of them. So I hope that helped. Next time we will talk about some of the actual mechanics of undertaking a literature review, and I'll demonstrate some. Bye.